Go for it.
Okay, so now you guys, we're going to go over that SPEC that we talked about. I want you to notice here on the SPEC that it is written along the lines of the different roles in professional nursing. Member of a profession, provider of patient-centered care, patient safety advocate, and member of a healthcare team. Okay, I also want you to notice up here that it has a code, okay, or a legend to tell us how to grade, how you're going to be graded. Notice that a 4 is excellent performance. Look at the definition. Exceeds performance in meeting competencies consistently, skillfully, and with early and progressive, notice here, self-direction, and is able to meet the competencies. This means I don't have to tell you. You come in, you practice, you do everything like you're supposed to, and never have to have a verbal warning or anything. That's a 4, okay? A 3 is still good. It's still between a B and an A. That means that you meet the competencies consistently, skillfully, with progressive self-direction, and is able to meet competencies with minimal prompting. This is like you got a verbal warning. Hey, you need to step it up. You need to practice more. Maybe you failed or were unsuccessful at one first attempt, but then after that you did just fine. Okay, that's a 3. A 2 is still satisfactory, but it means that you have more prompting and more guidance. A 1 is unsatisfactory. This will happen when you get a class 1 warning. Okay, you will not be able to get anything higher than a 1 in that particular area. Okay, so this kind of gives you an idea. A 0 is unsafe performance. The only time I issue a 0 is like if you fail your second attempt of a skill. Then that would be a 0. It would result in failure of the course, and you would receive a 0 on your SPEC for that. Okay? So look at some of the areas. Let's look at this one. Promptly communicates with faculty regarding absences and tardies prior to scheduled time. I am, like I said, I am lenient with that. I know that everybody can't call me ahead of time. You know, if you're traveling, you have an accident, that sort of thing. Look at this. Arrives on time to skills lab. All right? So each one of these areas have certain things, and y'all need to go over them. When I finish filling these out, then a number of points is assigned to each 4, each 3, each 2, and each 1. And then that's all scored together to get a total score. If at some time you have received a class 2 warning, we will deduct 5 points from your total SPEC grade. If at some time you received a class 3 warning, we will deduct 10 points from that SPEC grade. And then you would have your final SPEC grade. How much does your SPEC count towards your grade, your overall grade? 25%. Okay? Anybody have any questions about that? So let's talk about skills warnings. Skills warnings have different levels. The first time that you do something, let's say one of the most common reasons that you'll receive a warning is if you are unsuccessful at a first attempt of a skill. So let's say that you receive a verbal warning because you've made it through all the way to Foley catheter, but you're having a little trouble with sterile gloving, and so you don't pass that on the first attempt because of problems with sterile gloving. So you decide, man, I'm going to have to get in there and practice sterile gloving because I've got another sterile procedure in the central line dressing change. And you do that, and you never get another clinical warning. What's going to happen is you won't make a 4, but you'll make a 3 in the area that I checked. Notice these areas where you're deficient are in those same 4 rows. You'll know exactly what area you're going to get the skills warning in. Okay. Let's say that we have another student who just does not practice for whatever reason. So the first skill they fail is going to, maybe the first skill they fail is vital signs and they have to repeat it. They get a verbal warning. Each time you get a warning for the same infraction, it's going to be stepped up a little bit. So then they come in and they didn't practice for NG2, insertion. They get a class 1 then. What's the highest they can get on their SPEC if they receive a class 1? A 1. Then they come in again and they didn't pass Foley catheter. And so they get a warning here for Foley catheter. This is now it's up to a class 2. Now they can only get a 1 in that area, which is going to lower their grade a little bit, but the big thing is that we're going to take 5 points off of their total grade, their total SPEC grade. And then if they failed another skill, it would be a class 3, that would be 10 points off. Okay? These skills warnings, they have supportive comments, what you did wrong, what you need, and then what you need to do to make it better. I also write a lot of these verbal and class 1s for tardies. If you're tardy in this class, the first time is a verbal warning, and the second time, and so on. Okay? Any questions about that? All right. The next pages are to let you know kind of the guidelines that I use for filling out the SPEC. It once again has the level of performance key, and it also tells you how everything is calculated. Okay, I'm not going to go through that individually. The next 2 pages are pages 26 and 27. This is the competency performance evaluations. I call this the boxy sheet. Now, this boxy sheet, once it's filled out at the end of the semester, will become part of your final paperwork that goes on, and it'll be part of your permanent file. We have to have these on file that you safely demonstrated all of these skills in order for you to be able to go to the clinical facilities in case there's ever any question about your abilities. And so here's what we use to show that you safely perform these skills, and it's page 26 and 27. So you need to go home this evening or sometime before you come back to class, and you need to print these off. Okay? Do y'all have any questions on that? That is the end of the clinical grading. Does anybody have, or not clinical grading, but skills grading, does anybody have any questions about grading or anything? Yes, ma'am.
Where do we get the blue jackets again?
The blue jackets you can get at the Amarillo College bookstore. Okay? Okay. What?
The actual jacket?
Oh, I'm sorry. The actual jacket, I'm sorry. The patches you get at the Amarillo College bookstore, we're done.
Are you done?
The actual jackets you can get at any uniform shop here in Amarillo.